All right, this second video I want to show you by Jordan Peterson. A harmless man is not a good man. His are always bangers. After School is always banger. So let's check it out.
Hello, welcome to another episode of After School. I'm Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. Today, we'll be summoning our inner monsters. Without further ado, let's dive in.
You know, you might say that someone who is incapable of cruelty is a higher moral being than someone who is capable of cruelty. And I would say, and this follows Jung as well, that that's incorrect, and it's dangerously incorrect, because if you are not capable of cruelty, you are absolutely a victim to anyone who is.
Yes! So you gotta have the dog in you! That's what that means! If you don't got like, I don't wanna hurt anybody. You know, the world is so safe, I won't hurt anybody. No one says you have to hurt anybody, but you need to know how to protect you. You gotta have the dog in you. That's what it is.
And so,
what do you mean stop twisting words? That's literally what he just said. That's what he just said.
Incorrect, because if you are not capable of cruelty, you are absolutely a victim to anyone who is. And so, part of the reason that people go watch anti-heroes and villains is because there's a part of them crying out for the incorporation of the monster within them, which is what gives them strength of character and self-respect, because it's impossible to respect yourself until you grow teeth. And if you grow teeth, then you realize that you're somewhat dangerous, or maybe somewhat seriously dangerous, and then you might be more willing to demand that you treat yourself with respect and other people do the same thing.
Facts.
That doesn't mean that being cruel is better than not being cruel. What it means is that being able to be cruel and then not being cruel is better than not being able to be cruel. Because in the first case, you're nothing but weak and naive. And in the second case, you're dangerous, but you have it under control. And you know,
that's the old-fashioned Naruto way, bro. That's the old-fashioned Naruto way. Having the nine-tailed fox in you, but then eventually getting it under control. And it's kind of like, now I'm so dangerous, but I know how to control this anger. That's when he becomes the best. That's when he becomes the GOAT. That's what happens. First, he's a kid that doesn't know how to control that at all, doesn't know what's going on. Then he becomes a teenager, loses way more control, and then finally gets it. And then that's when we're all like, oh yeah, he's a GOAT. He's an El Aura? Nigga, Naruto's got the best aura of all time. What are you talking about?
A lot of martial arts concentrate on exactly that as part of their philosophy of training. It's like, we're not training you to fight. We're training you to be peaceful and awake and avoid fights. But if you happen to have to get in one, and I guess the philosophy also is that if you're competent at fighting, that actually decreases the probability that you're going to have to fight, because when someone pushes you, you'll be able to respond with confidence, and with any luck, and this is certainly the case with bullies, with any luck, a reasonable show of confidence, which is very much equivalent to a show of dominance, is going to be enough to make the bully back off. And so the strength that you develop in your monstrousness is actually the best guarantee of peace. And that's partly why Jung believed that it was necessary for people to integrate their shadow. And he said that was a terrible thing for people to attempt, because the human shadow, which is all those things about yourself that you don't...
No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell.
...want to realize reaches all the way to hell. And what he meant by that was, it's through an analysis of your own shadow that you can come to understand why other people are capable, and you as well, of the sorts of terrible atrocities that characterized, let's say, the 20th century. And without that understanding, there's no possibility of bringing it under control. When you study Nazi Germany, for example, or you study the Soviet Union, particularly under Stalin, and you're asking yourself, well, what are these perpetrators like? Forget about the victims, let's talk about the perpetrators. The answer is, they're just like you. And if you don't know that, that just means that you don't know anything about people, including yourself. And then it also means that you have to discover why they're just like you. And believe me, that's no picnic. So that's enough to traumatize people, and that's partly why they don't do it. And it's also partly why the path to enlightenment and wisdom is seldom trod upon.
They're just like you, bro. We're all capable of the worst, man. It's a great reminder, dog. It genuinely is a great reminder. Like we are all capable of doing some menacing ass shit, dog. We all are. And I think if you don't think that, then you go into the world with it being super misconstrued in your eyes, bro. It's like when someone hurts you or does something wrong, I feel like you'll think it's you. You'll think like people aren't capable of just doing bad shit, so it must be me. People must just hate me. It's just like, nah, it's not you, bro. It's not you. People will just look out for themselves first, and to do that, they'll fuck shit up. They'll fuck shit up to do it.
Why the path to enlightenment and wisdom is seldom trod upon, because if it was all a matter of following your bliss and doing what made you happy, then everyone in the world would be a paragon of wisdom. But it's not that at all. It's a matter of facing the thing you least want to face. And everyone has that there's this old story in King Arthur where the knights go off to look for the Holy Grail, which is either the cup that Christ drank out of at the Last Supper, or the cup into which the blood that gushed from his side was poured when he was crucified. The stories vary, but it's basically a holy object, like the phoenix in some sense, that's a representation of transformation. So it's an ideal, and so King Arthur's knights, who sit at a round table because they're all roughly equal, go off to find the most valuable thing. And where do you look for the most valuable thing when you don't know where it is? Well, each of the knights looks at the forest surrounding the castle and enters the forest at the point that looks darkest to him. And that's a good thing to understand, because the gateway to wisdom and the gateway to the development of personality, which is exactly the same thing, is precisely through the portal that you do not want to climb through. And the reason for that's actually quite technical.
Interesting.
This is a Jungian presupposition too, is that, well, there's a bunch of things about you that are underdeveloped, and a lot of those things are because there's things you've avoided looking at because you don't want to look at them, and there's parts of you you've avoided developing because it's hard for you to develop those parts. And so it's by virtual necessity that what you need is where you don't want to look, because that's where you've kept it. And so when you see these stories of the hero, journeying to unknown lands of terror and danger, that's what happens to you. It happens to you all the time. You're in this little safe space like the Hobbit in the Shire, and then there's a great evil brewing somewhere, and you can no longer ignore it, so off you go into the land of terror and uncertainty. And better to go on purpose than accidentally, that's for sure, because at least you can be prepared. And we also know that if you're going to face a threat, if you face it voluntarily, what happens is your body activates itself for exploration and mastery. But if you face it involuntarily,
you're scared,
same size threat, then you revert to prey mode.
Yeah,
you want to frozen, and that's way more stressful. It's way harder on your body, and so it's better to keep your eye open and watch for emergent threats, because you all know what you're not doing quite right and where your life is likely to unravel. You all have a sense of that, and the best thing to do is to not ignore that, to pay attention to it, to watch it, and to take corrective action early. And then you stay on top of things, and your little trip to the underworld might be a few minutes long instead of a catastrophe that produces post-traumatic stress disorder, knocks you out for 4 or 5 years, and maybe you never recover. So one of the things you need to do if you're going to be a human being is to prepare yourself to be useful in the face of death. And so when you have a parent that dies, which shatters people's ideas, often they can't even think about it. If you can't even think about that, man, you've got some thinking to do, because you need to be able to at least think about that, because otherwise you're just going to be a wasteland when it happens. And you never know, you could even have a higher ambition. Maybe you could even be useful when it happens, instead of being part of the heap of destroyed people who also have to be taken care of. You know, and that's brutal. You have to be brutal to be useful in the aftermath of your parents' death. You know, you don't get to crumble and fall apart.
I think it's one of the shittiest thoughts to think about, realistically. On God is one of the shittiest thoughts. Whenever it comes to your mind, you almost automatically want to. I think it's the easiest thing to make you sad. A parent dying in your head, parent, grandparent, you're like, fuck. Like, you know life has to come to an end, but that thought is just like, no fucking way. Just no fucking way. But he's spitting facts at the same time, nigga. If you can't think about it, if thinking about that makes you want to just break down and go into a hobbit hole, I don't know anyone who can, to be honest. So I'm not sure if that relates to too many people, but if you can, I'd be shocked. 1 and 2, it's inevitable. So you better get fucking ready. Like, it's either you or them.
And no, you have every reason to. So you got to be kind of some tough monster to manage that. But do you want to be useful in the face of tragedy, or do you want to be pathetic? Well, you make your choice.
Harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. Fucking Jordan Peterson, dog. Goated.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of After School. I appreciate the work this creative animation team has done in bringing my content focusing on psychological matters to their audience in mind in such a creative and innovative manner. Good.
All right, get off the script. Get off the script, bro. All right, bro.